Hello, literarians. Welcome back to the Literary Lori YouTube channel. I'm Literary Lori, aka Lori L. Tharps. And if you love to read books or write books that center the lives of Black people and other people of color globally, then you are in the right place because I completely love those things too. But this video is not about my love of books, it is about my love of Black authors. This is day 21 of my Black Literary History series. Black Literary History series. Yeah, every single day in February, I am sharing the story of an amazing Black writer born in February. This is part of my plan to make henceforth February known as Black Literary History Month instead of just Black History Month, because honestly, there are so many incredible Black writers born in February. It should be a holiday already. So I'm doing my part. I'm super glad you're here. Let's get into today's amazing author. We are talking about today Mr. Ishmael Reed. Okay. Now, this is a big one for me because I can't even begin to figure out how to summarize this man's life. I'm going to start just by telling you how people describe Ishmael Reed, okay? He is defined as the greatest and most fearless living writer, one of America's most significant literary figures, playwright, poet, satirist, and giant killer, a major force in literature, and one of the key thinkers of multiculturalism. These are just some of the ways that people describe Ishmael Reed. So I'm going to give you literally the basic outlines of his life. I'm going to tell you of some of his incredible awards and accomplishments. And then I'm going to just give you a couple of examples of his most recent work just to give you a sense of who this genius is, okay? So I'm guessing you probably have heard the name Ishmael Reed. You may be a big fan of his work, but maybe you don't know exactly who he is. So let me just try to just paint a picture. All right, let's go. First and foremost, you must know that Ishmael Reed is multifaceted, right? He is multifaceted, multi-talented, a polymath, if you will. He has published over 30 books of poetry, prose, essays, and plays. He's a novelist, an essayist, a songwriter, a composer, a playwright, a professor, an editor, a publisher, and he also happens to be a father and a husband. He not only writes incredible books of poetry and prose, he also writes lyrics, and he has been commissioned to write lyrics for musicians as far-ranging as Taj Mahal and Macy Gray, okay? And he writes, like I said, he writes everything, but he's known for his satire and irony, and he talks about race and takes on the literary establishment. But even saying that, I mean, he literally writes about all the things, but he's definitely known for being a cultural critic, a social critic, trying to dismantle the concepts of race, identity, and he certainly forces people to look at the truth about American history, particularly the parts that have been left out of the official record. Just again, to give you a sense of how wide the scope of his genius is, he holds the record as being the only writer nominated for the National Book Award in 2 categories the same year. That's what we're talking about. All right, so let's get into this Ishmael Reed's actual biography, and just to give you again a little bit of where he came from, a bit of his origin story. Of course, Ishmael Reed was born on this day, February 21st, 1938. Am I right there? 1938? Did I just make that up? Yeah. So he was born, let me just triple check that. Yes. Sorry. He was born, and my bad, it's not February 21st, February 22nd. Girl, get the dates right. I'm so sorry. February 22nd, 1938 Ishmael Reed was born. Okay, let me get my notes right up here. Okay, so he's born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. However, when he was 4 years old, his family moves up to Buffalo, New York. He was 4 years old when they moved, and he went to school in Buffalo. And he actually, we talk about how writers got their career start. He actually started working for a local newspaper in Buffalo, starting as a delivery boy, but worked his way up to becoming the paper's jazz columnist. Okay, so we see where the talent, that it starts early, right? Then he ended up going to the University of Buffalo, but he only stayed there for, I think, about 2.5 years. And then he dropped out because he decided that he had gotten enough information in those 2.5 years. And he said, quote, "I didn't want to be a slave to somebody else's reading lists." So he was ready to go on his own and finish his education. Now, just because he dropped out of school didn't mean he terminated his traditional education. Over the course of his career, he was awarded an honorary degree, an honorary doctorate from several universities over, at least, from Johnson Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina, and other universities as well. So dropping out of college did not stop him from, receiving his degrees from important institutions, if you will. So after he drops out of college, he ends up moving to New York City. And in New York City, he ends up in the Lower East Side. He starts a couple of alternative magazines and publications. He becomes a member of the Umbra Writers Workshop, which was a collective of Black artists and writers, and it's the Umbra Writers Workshop that a lot of the founders of the Black arts movement, that's where they were kind of fomenting and starting that movement. Ishmael Reed isn't considered part of, the founders of the Black arts movement, but he was, hanging with those people at the time. Now, by 1968, Ishmael Reed decides that he has become, he's fallen out of love or disenchanted with New York City. He talked about feeling that New York was a place where writers, became kind of, there could only be one anointed writer. He talked about tokenism, and he wanted to get out of that literary trap, that literary world. And he said, quote, "I'm going to go to the most barbaric place in the United States." So Carl and I went to Los Angeles. He really talks about how he thought Los Angeles was the anti-New York, and he could get some more anonymity for his writing, and it just was not the kind of literary hotspot. So again, he thought this was the antithesis of New York at the time. Carla was his companion at the time. Eventually, he and Carla got married in 1970. They had one daughter named Tennessee. Carla is a playwright, a dancer, a director, musician. She is multi-talented herself, and they often collaborate on work together. And their daughter, Tennessee, also collaborates with them as well. She is also a writer and poet herself. Anyway, so now Ishmael is on the West Coast. He's in California, and he eventually ends up working at the University of California, Berkeley, ends up teaching there for 35 years until he retires in 2005. Now, over his career, he teaches at many other institutions as well, including California College of the Arts, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, and the University of the Antilles in Martinique, amongst other universities. So you're getting the idea, right? This man is incredible, doing all the things. And I haven't even touched the surface yet. So he's teaching, right? And he's mentoring up and coming young writers. He's also working as a publisher or an editor at various small presses and journals throughout the 70s. Eventually, he has his own press called Reed Cannon and Johnson is actually a press that he started with some guy named Cannon and Johnson. Let's see, Steve Cannon and Joe Johnson. And that was focused on multicultural literature in the 70s. But eventually Reed has his own publishing imprint called Ishmael Reed Publishing Company. And he also has an online literary publication called Conch Magazine that has poetry, essays, and fiction. Now, what's really significant in this is that Ishmael Reed is, he's doing his own writing. I mentioned that he's written over 30 books, right? Poetry, fiction, all this. But he's also publishing and discovering and mentoring other young writers. And a lot of writers, names that you will recognize, he was the first person to publish them. Or if not necessarily the first person, he did publish a lot of great writers and from all walks of life. Two people you might be surprised or excited to hear. He published a young woman in one of his classes by the name of Terry McMillan, also Mona Simpson. So he was the first person to publish Terry McMillan and Mona Simpson in his literary journals in his literary journals. So he has so many stories of all the incredible people that came through his classes and that he mentored and or launched their careers. So he's writing, he's teaching, he's publishing, he's mentoring, he's doing all of these things. And then, at some point, I shouldn't say at some point, he's into music. He's always been into music. Music has been fundamental to his life all along. But he decided to start actually seriously studying jazz piano at age 60. Okay. By 2008, he was honored as Blues Songwriter of the Year from the West Coast Blues Hall of Fame Awards. Between 2012 and 2016, Ishmael Reed served as the first San Francisco Jazz Poet Laureate. Okay. All right. And in 2022, Ishmael Reed released his first album of original compositions called The Hands of Grace. Do you understand where this is going? Like here he says, I'm going to start, I've always been into music. I've done lyrics for famous musicians. Now I want to really learn how to play the music. I want to, and not just any music, jazz, studies jazz piano. Okay. The thing about Ishmael Reed that is so fascinating and inspiring is that today's his birthday and he's 87 today, right? But he's never stopped not even reinventing, but adding to his list of skills. And that's what's so powerful. So he said at one point that he wrote a novel and he illustrated. I guess it would be like a graphic novel. And so he illustrated the novel himself and he gave it to his publisher. And the publisher said that his illustrations weren't good enough. I guess you would say they were cartoons. So he said, I went to cartoon school at 70. And then he got his cartoons published in multiple places. So studying jazz piano at 60, goes to cartoon school at 70. You see, this is how we stay young. This is how we're still creating new, incredible work. Like age, I hate to sound cliche, but age is just a number if you're Ishmael Reed. I want to share just two recent works of Ishmael Reed's, because just to kind of show the type of work that he does. And I thought that these plays give a lot of context without me having to, break down a whole lot of literary context and things like that. So one of Ishmael Reed's recent plays that he wrote and staged was called The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. You know Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy who created Hamilton, right? So this play is a satire and it critiques that play because apparently Ishmael Reed was not a fan. He really, really thought that Hamilton whitewashed that the story of Alexander Hamilton, who was a slave owner, and he thought that by casting actors of color, it was a way to ignore the very terrible things that Alexander Hamilton did. And so the play The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda was apparently kind of like a Christmas carol. And essentially, I'm just reading here. I'm literally reading. I think this is just a summary, that after taking Ambien given to his agent, this is what happens in the play. Hamilton creator Lin-Manuel Miranda is visited by the spirits of George Washington and Alexander Hamilton, as well as those left out of his musical, including enslaved Africans, Native Americans, a white indentured servant, and Harriet Tubman. Okay, I want to see this play. I think that sounds hilarious. So Ishmael Reed said that his goal for writing The Haunting was for it to be, quote, a counter narrative to the text that has been distributed to thousands of students throughout the country. In other words, he was afraid of the blackwashing of the Hamilton narrative. And so he actually said that he likened the casting of black actors to play George Washington that would be similar as if Jewish actors would portray Nazi officials. So yeah, he was a big critic of this, and he was very mad because one thing Ishmael Reed is known for is his correcting of history, particularly when it comes to people of color and their stories that are often ignored or, hidden. So here's a fun fact that those of you who've been watching my series will find interesting. Somebody who also apparently deeply despised, I don't know if I can say deeply despised, but fundamentally did not like Hamilton either, for the same reasons as Ishmael Reed didn't like it, because of its whitewashing or blackwashing, maybe is what you would say in this case. I made up that term, blackwashing, was Toni Morrison. Yes, that Toni Morrison. Apparently, she also was not a fan, and she disliked the play so much that she helped to fund Ishmael Reed's play, The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. According to Ishmael Reed, she was the second largest patron to help him get that play staged. Apparently she passed away before the play actually landed, was put up, and that was in 2019 that the play came out. So anyway, one other fun fact is, if you're watching this in real time, there's actually the Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda is being staged today in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Ishmael Reed's hometown. So yeah, that's cool. So this is happening right now. If it's being staged right now in 2021, so this play still has legs. Now, that play was in 2019. Another recent play is one that he did after The Haunting, was a play in 2021 that's called The Slave Who Loved Caviar. The Slave Who Loved Caviar. Can you guess what this is about? Probably not. I'm going to tell you. So The Slave Who Loved Caviar is actually a story about the relationship between Jean-Michel Basquiat and Andy Warhol. And the official description of the play says that in this play, Reed examines the racism directed at Basquiat and the ways that Andy Warhol, the art establishment, and the fashion industry exploited and profited from Basquiat's artistry. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts with Ishmael Reed talking about this play, The Slave Who Loved Caviar. And it's really fascinating. And just listening to some of his discussions with different interviewers, you really hear the nature of that relationship, where people assume Andy Warhol was like Basquiat's patron, when Ishmael Reed is really arguing that Basquiat had more to offer Andy Warhol, whose career was apparently more on the decline. So just Basquiat, being with Basquiat was like social proof for Warhol, was giving him a second life, if you will, with the younger generations and making him seem popular again, amongst many other things. So it's a fascinating play. And again, it really shows what Ishmael Reed is interested in doing and how he does it. He uses satire, he uses humor. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed in researching for this video, is that even as he's approaching 90, he still cracks himself up. He finds his work funny. He finds he's interested and engaged, even in the despair of some of the things he's talking about, he still can find humor in it. And I think that's probably how he stays engaged in the work, is that he still finds it interesting, finds things fascinating, and the range of his mind, he critiques American politics and literary traditions, etc. But he's global in his work and what he pulls from. I'm not even going to try to get into everything, but he is truly a global talent, and like the world is his oyster, the world is his source material. He's so fascinating. This has been such a treat for me to dig in, and I hope I've given you enough information for you to want to dig into his work. There's plenty of it, okay? And he's 87 today, but he's not done creating. So I can't, nor will I try to summarize him, because he's still alive. He's still making his mark. He's still doing whatever it is he's going to do. I'm going to leave you with a quote. He was asked in a 2023 interview if he thought of himself as a genius. Mind you, he did win the MacArthur Genius Award. Let me just give you a couple of the other awards that he won. So he was asked, do you think you are a genius? And just to be clear, he won the MacArthur Foundation Fellowship, which is the MacArthur Genius Grant. He won the Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship. He won a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. He won the LA Times Robert Kirsch Lifetime Achievement Award, the John Oliver Killens Lifetime Achievement Award, the Phyllis Wheatley Award, the Langston Hughes Medal, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Poetry Association. So the rest of the world pretty much thinks this man is a genius. I don't know what else you would need to define him as a genius. By the way, I have to do this one quick aside. When he won the MacArthur Genius Grant, which comes with a big paycheck, he gave a lot of that money, if not all of it. Not that he just gave it away, but he used the money to support Black theaters in the Bay Area, which were struggling, which it just speaks to the kind of person that he is. Anyway, so he was asked in an interview in 2023 if he considered himself a genius, and he said no. And the interviewer said, why? And he said, I don't think I'm a genius because I've met geniuses. Malcolm X is a genius. He'd read more books than I've read when I met him. So it's like he still has work to do. It sounds to me, I'm interpreting that, but it sounds like he still thinks that he has more work to do, more books to read, more plays to write, more music to compose. And again, he's turning 87 this year, and that doesn't seem to even bother him or come into his consideration in terms of what he should be doing now versus how much time he has left. So like I said, I hope I have encouraged you to, if you haven't already read Ishmael Reed's work, research, learn about him, go see one of his plays. They are still being staged. Read some of his poetry. Listen to podcasts with him. He is an incredible figure. And again, I think he's a visionary and genius. And I'm so glad that I got to do this video about him, because now I have, another, I'll say, a new literary hero. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for, your comments. And sorry, it's allergy season. I realize I'm like rubbing my nose a lot in all these videos. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I will be back tomorrow with another amazing story about another amazing Black author born in February. Bye.